Hi guys, hope you're well. Um, Welcome to my lockdown boardroom. So this has been the place where all my meetings have been held of recent, and I must admit it's been refreshingly different. So when this ends, I'm going to find a way to incorporate this kind of tranquility into our normal consults and meetings. Should be a refreshing change. What I want to chat to you today about was the stigma, the false sense of judgments that third parties will have, and how this literally makes situations worse when people delay matters, delay taking steps, and in that it makes a bad situation even worse. And what I'm talking about more specifically is when people come to terms with that they need to take some legal help, take action and legal recourse, and they don't. In other words, they just delay it. How that choice of delaying it makes the opportunity to get quick legal assistance or a remedy a lot harder. Our courts are very reluctant at times to come to the assistance of people that have willfully delayed the process. This applies across all civil litigation, all types of relief that you may want to invoke or proceedings that you want to defend. Um, but especially with debt counseling. Um, with debt counseling, there is an prescribed period by which you must start the process, and your delaying in starting the process can only result in further hardships, and often certain creditors or credit accounts are excluded by virtue of your delay. And then you then have to bring other applications at a cost to try and include those matters in the debt counseling relief that you're seeking, all because you had the perception that if you go on to debt counseling, there's some stigma attached. There's something so adversely negative that you wanted to avoid that process. And that thought is so wrong. I mean, understand that's conservatively 60 to 65%, more realistically 70% or more of the country is over indebted, which means the people that you are fearful of, or the judgments of the people that you are fearful of, if they knew that you were on debt counseling, are probably doing debt counseling themselves. So one, that makes no sense. But more importantly, it's asking for help is not a sign of weakness, is not a sign of failure on some level. It's literally what ought to be um, the most reasonable thing to do, the most responsible thing to do. And I say that, appreciative of the fact that it's not human nature to want to readily ask for help. I mean, I've never been lost when I'm driving or something. Well, officially anyway, I've been unofficial. I prefer to say I've been, taking the scenic route. But on a serious note, what that means is people just do not want to admit. And I think it's brought up through society that if you admit these things, that you are admitting that you have failed on some level. Um, so yeah, that's wrong. I mean, it comes down to protecting your assets, protecting your livelihood, protecting what you've worked so hard for, but more importantly, protecting what your family require from you. Um, that shouldn't take a long time to, you know, come to terms with and make a conscious decision that you need help. And needing help is not an admission that you did something wrong. It doesn't mean that just because you are going under a certain process that you were wrong in something, that you caused this, that you brought this upon yourself. It's not that. I mean, life happens. And the reason why the majority, the overwhelming majority of people are under debt counseling, it's not because they were abused some credit facility or they gambled their money away, or it's nothing to do with that. Life happens. I mean, people get sick and there's no medical aid. There's emergencies that aren't provided for. There are extended family emergencies where you just literally have to take up and ensure that the family name and everyone within the family is taken care of. And these things cost money. This money is not provided for. And when you pay for these things, when we have, when you go through divorces, and when you have people in the family being retrenched, these things are just, it was not expected. It's just life happening. And these are the contributing factors to why people and families become over indebted. So putting your hand up and saying, look, I need some assistance. I just need a breathing space. I just need some help to make sure that my assets are okay and my family is protected and our lifestyle for the better part does not change adversely. It's not an admission that you did something wrong. It's simply taking responsibility and saying, for a very short time, I need a breathing space and you to help me with that. And that's what debt counseling is. So my advice to people, because you'd think that given that prior to COVID-19, that our population is so over indebted, that you'd have the majority of people going for debt counseling. It's not so. It doesn't work that way. And comes down to the thought process. So I would advise people now more than ever. The likelihood of litigation starting, and once it does, and once you get tangled into it, it literally is devastating. You want to avoid that. Consult with a debt counselor. Just see if that is the most viable option. And from my experience, it is. It is not viable. It is not sustainable to take more loans to try and pay off. At some point, it's going to run out. At some point, you're going to come to a point where you just literally can't continue to sustain that cycle. So think that through. And if you need any help, you're free to give us a call, just to give you an assessment to see how much you would save. And my advice would be to just concentrate yourself, not what you think other people would think if they knew that you were under debt counseling. Because quite frankly, one, it doesn't matter, and two, they're probably under debt counseling in any event. But more importantly, consider those that depend on you to make the right decision, and let that guide you. Take care, and yeah. Hope you enjoyed the chat from our new boardroom.